Hello, welcome to my podcast. This is Thueba, your host, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to improve your English listening skills. So let's get started. So before we go any deeper, let's just stop and reflect and ask ourselves why it's listening is so much important. Why so? So I would say it's very important because it is the core of the language itself. Like, if you are not good at listening, or if your listening skills are very poor, the other skills will be the same as well. So, the better the listening skills you have, the better chances you will be with improving the other areas of English accordingly, you know. So the fairest thing that I would advise for somebody who wanted to improve his listening skills is to first sit down and know exactly what your level is in terms of listening. What materials you can understand and what you can't. What you are pretty good at and what you are so bad at, you know. And that is going to help you into making a challenge that is sustainable and that is you can improve on, because if you start with something that is so hard for you to understand, no matter how much time you spend on it, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day you are not going to understand it, right? Yeah. But if you start with something that is understandably to some extent good for you, even if it's 30%, 40%, you will with time build up that into making it 80%, 90%, or even 70%. And that is good. So the very thing is that to know exactly what you can understand and what you cannot understand. And start from where you can understand and then move forward. So I want to share my story here. Um, when I started learning this language, I was bad at listening to the point that I cannot understand pretty much anything. I cannot understand anything to be honest at the start. But I knew that I had to start somewhere. So I started with Disney movies. And most of those movies, or some of them, I already watched as a child, even if it's in Arabic or with subtitles. So I kind of know the story before I even watch it. But yeah, I started it because I heard a lot of people at the time told me that it's the most simplest place to watch because adult movies were so hard to understand, let alone like news or podcast or so I started with Disney movies and I was understanding like 10%, but my emotion are all there with them because I genuinely enjoyed the movies because I liked them since I was a child, and at that time I still like them as well. So I just kept watching, and as I'm keeping watching from a movie to another, from a movie to another. And because they are children movies, their English was very clear and very structured, and they use simple words according to any other place you could find English materials on at that time. It is so much basic, and they use words pretty much with emotion because it's children movie, so it has a lot of emotion with them. So I kind of understand what does the words mean without needing a dictionary or so. So like the word happy, for example, we all know what does that mean from schools and all of that. But when I watch those movies, when I hear the word happy, I felt happy. So that's how I get used to the language, and I kept on doing so. I watched a lot of movies, like hundreds of them. not hundreds, up until 100, to be to be um to be honest, you know. And after that, I kind of moved to YouTube, because YouTube get like, I used to watch some materials that I was genuinely interested in, and it was also challenging at the beginning, but I was a little bit better, you know, because I already watched it a lot and I improved for some point. But yeah, I kept watching, and the reason why I kept watching, because the thing that I was watching was interesting to me to start with, before I ever have to use them for any reason of improving or whatever, you know. So I just kept doing that, and I don't know what happened in between. I can't even recall. But at some point, I moved to podcast. You know, maybe 2 hours, sorry, 2 years ago, I moved to podcast. Okay, and I remember that before I moved to podcast, like some years before that, when I first get when I first heard a podcast episode, it was very fast, very unclear, and I wasn't understanding anything at all, because they sound like they speak a completely different language. Can you just like imagine that? Because in podcasts, people speak very fast. And yeah, after some point, I just joined podcast, and it was challenging also at the start, but I was better, you know. I can like sustain the challenge, and I can improve upon it. I just need time. And after some point, I found myself just going with the flow with them and enjoying them and very good with them. And I went from understanding 20% in those podcasts to understanding almost near to 100%. And when I came back to YouTube after I spent some time in being so addictive to podcasts, I found YouTube videos very slow, to the point that I adjust the speed of it to be 2x every time I watch a video before I watch it, because I was so used to the podcast speed. So the takeaway from my story is that when you know your level and you make a challenge that is accordance to your level, and you keep going, you will eventually excel in that. And if you keep doing that for a while, and if you, after being good at some level, you move to the other level and start a new challenge and repeat that for quite a while, your English will be fantastic. You know, it's just a matter of time, and the days are going fast anyway. Like a week will pass, a month will pass, and all of that will pass. And just if you make a routine for you to learn it on, that will be much better than when you do it randomly, because the consistency is the key, as always, you know. And I will suggest to take the listening as something that is part of your life, not something that you have to stop doing things in order for you to do them. Like, you can make it as something you as a hobby, for example. That would be good. But at some point, like, I find myself, for myself, if I had to speak about myself, I found myself that when I do chores at the house, I had my headphones on and I listen, you know, and I advise everybody to do the same. And for example, you can use your headset and listen when you are outside at the transportation. For example, if you're going to work or going to university or going to do whatever, you can use it as in your time that you have nothing to do. You can add listening to it as well. And the point is that to try to include it as much as possible in your life in a way that felt effortless for you, you know. And I also remember at some point at my university, I started learning or taking my courses in English rather than in my um, own language, like Arabic. Okay. And in that way, even though at the time of university, because we used to have a lot of classes going on, and at the exam season or at the months before the exam, I was pretty much not doing anything except for focusing on my university. And so, so when I was already taking those classes and learning the materials in YouTube in English, that was considered as me listening as well, and I tried to make it into my life in a way that it's around my life. It felt effortless and it felt part of my life, just like the child who grew up in a community, and since he opened his eyes in the world, he was at the same community, and he just watched people speak about with the language, I mean. And then he was just listening. At some point when he was 4 or 5, he started to speak just like them. And at some point when he went to school, he started to learn how to read, and he become a very good educated somebody who can speak and listen and write and read and all of that. And it came down to just make it effortless and make it consistent, I think. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention, which is that if you are listening to this episode right now, that means that your English is pretty good. If you understand up to 50% of what I just mentioned, or more than that, or even 100%, that means that you are pretty much good. And I would kind of advise anybody to just listen without using subtitles in their or your local language, because using subtitles will kind of make you fall back rather than help you, even though it sounds the contrary if you look at it from the surface. But I know that when we start something that we're not used to it, or it has some challenge to us, it will be challenging, right? But if we kept on doing that, like kept on listening without the subtitles, or even if you need to see the words written, use a transcript, not a subtitles, okay? And just listening to it and feel the words and try to engage as much as possible with the thing that you are listening to. That will help you far more better in the long run, rather than like translating with the subtitles. And the other advice I will give is to try to always listen to materials that you genuinely enjoy listening to. So, like, I remember myself, I watched a lot of series also in English, and all of the series that I watched, I was genuinely interested in them, whether it's like children's series or teenager series, whatever. All of them, I was interested in them. So when I watched Disney movies, I was interested in those Disney movies. There is different genres in Disney movies. You can choose whatever that suits you as well, or in movies, whatever. Just choose something that you can watch without having to understand everything, because you already are interested in watching it, okay? And I believe that's it. Yeah, just know your level and try to match the challenge with your level to make sure that you will improve. And once you are good at that level, move on to the next, and move on to the next, and move on to the next, and don't use subtitles, and try to engage with whatever you are watching, because you already chose something that you genuinely enjoy. And try to stick with this habit and try to make it somehow part of your life, part of your routine, and try to make it feel effortless. And without you even noticing it, you'll find yourself just perfect.